Hello and welcome. My name is James Haxall. I'm the editor for FinTech Global, and I'm joined today by Fredrik Davéus, and we're going to be discussing why investment firms should implement digital channels. So without much further ado, Fredrik, would you like to introduce yourself and give a bit background about Kidbrooke?
Yeah, sure. Hi, James. My name is Fredrik Davéus. Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here. So Kidbrooke has been around since 2011, but it started out as a consulting firm. So we've been focusing on the tech and the software solutions since 2019. And we provide what we would like to call the seamless financial analytics. So it's at the core, it's a simulation engine, which is delivered as a service to really sort of provide that, analytics on tap for our customers so they can focus on the business, the customers, and not maintaining and developing these sometimes rather complex software solutions. And the sort of long-term goal really is to have or work toward a situation where most people can have access to good decision-making tools related to their financial circumstances and make really educated decisions around that. That's the sort of overarching vision from our side.
Perfect, thank you. And sort of jumping straight into the question. So how will the cost of living crisis affect the wealth management space?
So in this case, I think there's a number of things. One is that obviously, it'll differ between what type of customer segment you're talking about. And then sort of focusing on the wealth industry, I guess it sort of ranges from the mass affluent or bordering on retail all the way to HNWIs, right? So I think in the lower end of that spectrum, of course, you will see things that the situation may not be as great financially that it has been. So I think there you'll see maybe some risk decisions around risk or adjustments concerning any financial goals you might have or sort of spending requirements if you're living off your wealth. Whereas on the more wealthier side of things, obviously money will last, right? That's not the real problem. We'll have more maybe questions around wealth transfer if that's sort of coming up, next generation type stuff. But also I think maybe thinking about risks a bit more. Obviously, previously during the long sort of bull market, the best thing is typically just to leverage and buy, risky assets. But given the sort of inflation situation, etc., and the markets behaving differently, now you have to look at it and sort of think about a bit more about it, I think. But I think this is also an opportunity for wealth managers to really be able to help their clients, right? Because we have a more complex situation and there'll be more needs for advice and guidance to get through that. And subsequently, it's an opportunity for firms like us where, the analytics you need to really be able to answer a broader set of questions and customer challenges will, of course, increase demand on your analytics capabilities. It's also about moving away from the purely manual or work in terms of providing this input to customers, and you need to sort of be able to industrialize and scale your operations as well as a wealth manager.
Perfect. And you mentioned there about the sense of an opportunity, and should investment managers see the cost of living crisis as an opportunity?
I think so. I mean, obviously, also with AUM coming down, depending on how the markets develop, there might be a bit of a pinch in terms of the revenue side. But I think it's an opportunity to also maybe culturally internally in an organization to get through to start to sort of deploy automation and technology in a smart way. I don't believe we should, technology should not take over from the advisor, and especially not on the higher end segments, because the personal relationship is very important, right? But everything that can be automated in the background doesn't really negatively affect your relationship, I think you should look at and try to do. And what we try to do as a provider is obviously providing those tools also to automate, more of the complex analysis and decision making you do as an advisor.
Perfect, thank you. And so why should wealth managers seek to implement digital channels during this time?
So again, I think there are a couple of aspects here which varies across the different customer segments. I think there is a lot of demand in certain segments for digital tools and make it simple. There's a lot of other services these days which make your life simple, right? You can order most stuff online. You can get transport. You can look at, entertainment very easily through your phone or apps in your TV. Everything which is perceived as being simple and easy to use and modern, etc. I think that the demand for the same type of tools is very, very much coming along on the broader banking, finance side, and obviously wealth management. So that's one core reason, I think. And then obviously you have to adapt how and why and what you do, right, depending on your typical segments you work with. Then I think there is a lot also on the cost efficiency side. I mean, so there's a couple of aspects there. If it's relevant for you to have self-service channels, obviously you can save time as an advisor, right? Because you can let the customer perform tasks themselves or inform themselves without sort of taking up your face time. But also on the sort of more back-end processes, right? So crafting propositions, creating portfolios, do an analysis, forward-looking analysis, which you present to the client. If you can automate that work, again, very good from a cost efficiency perspective, and also in terms of the ongoing monitoring. And that's also a regulatory aspect, right? Because I think the regulators more and more coming on to, okay, you have all these clients which are onboarded, that's very nice, but like you have many clients per advisor, how are you effectively monitoring those portfolios, making sure you promote good outcomes and what have you in terms of the consumer duty regulations that's upcoming in the UK, for example. So again, I think it's an opportunity to use technology to be more efficient, but also provide a higher level of service.
And you mentioned there at the start about the sort of the new customer demands and firms trying to meet those. So how can these digital channels help to ensure that a firm can better meet their customers' needs?
Yeah, so I think I think a lot of firms, institutions look at these tools as onboarding and sales tools purely. But I think you should sort of maybe take a step back and look at it from the customer's perspective, right? So the customers are quite aware, I think, when they're being sold to versus when they actually give support and help answering their questions and queries and problems they have, challenges with respect to their financial health and future. And when we see this also with some of our customers that have been live for the longest period of time, right? So they see, once you get these, you focus on the end customer question, right? So how much will my pension income be, or how can I have an impact? How can I affect that to make it higher if I think it should be higher? And you really start to try to answer that with proper assumptions, proper tools, realistic decision support tools. Customers kind of get that there's a value, and they start, two things happens. One is that they start to demand or actually offering to share more data with you because, they get value out of this thing, but if they also add, additional data to you, they think you can help them even more, right? And that's a great positive because that's always a struggle to engage customers enough to share data with you, right, as an institution. Secondly, they self-educate. And I think this is also true in many of the customer segments, that if you meet an advisor, right, you feel a bit, maybe you don't have the same expertise, you don't really understand everything, you don't maybe have a good grasp. But giving the customer the ability to self-educate, play around with, if it's forecasts or what if analysis or trying to understand the problem they're trying to solve, right? You empower them, and when the proportion of those go on into physical channels because they think they need more support and that an advisor can give, or have even more complex queries, we see in the data from our customers that those customers convert quicker, a lot easier, and actually also a lot more AUM if they've been through the self-service stuff first, right? And I think they feel empowered, and that I think is really interesting from a business perspective.
Perfect, thank you. And what are some of the biggest mistakes that you've seen firms make when they're trying to get those, implement those digital channels into their systems?
So I think, as with most transformation work or projects, right, it's trying to do too much at once. I think you really should start small with a well-defined, sub-segment of your customers, well-defined problems you're trying to solve for the customers. And you should get it out as early as possible, because what happens is you can start to learn, how do customers react to these things, be it self-service or advisor tooling, or, which you sort of interactively look at together with the customer in the meetings, for example. how do they react to maybe more relevant personalized notifications from your advisor or through some automatic digital delivery? Because that learning process is really powerful, right? And I think it also gives the organization a chance to start to see the benefits, and then you get a lot of extra push, and you know, you can leverage that learning both from externally and internally to have success when you go on. That's one thing, right? So start small and try to get stuff live as soon as possible to kick off the learning processes. Secondly, I think, again, more of a generic transformation problem. Management do not have enough decision support to make decisions in a speedy manner in these projects, which means that, you know, there's a lot of noise and a lot of risk that work stops, right? Because no one can sort of continue because there's a lack of a decision making power. We see that a lot. So I think that's also something you have to plan for, to make sure that you have enough resources which can provide management, steering committees, you know, however you organize these things to make sure that they have the decision support they need on a continuous basis.
And at the start of the call, we discussed about that sort of the cost of living crisis impacting potential customers and, you know, in their way of life. But, you know, how can these digital tools help to institutions to keep their customers happy and to, you know, make them feel a little bit, you know, less pressure during this time?
So, I mean, it's obviously the core problem here is very difficult, right? Because if someone lose their job, or, you know, if you have some sort of situation in where your income or assets decrease and can't meet your needs, it's often too late, right? So that work should ideally be done long before to be better prepared, right? But I think still, you know, because there will be obviously parts of the customer segments which are in less trouble but still have some more difficult making decisions. So maybe moving to bigger home, for example, right? Or you know, you're kind of fine, but can you afford this kind of purchase or afford these plans, or if you want to go down in you know, work less or whatever in the future. So I think there it's about a lot of these things. Often I think, especially with financial services, right, it's not really the service or product that's a problem. It's, do the customer understand the service or product? Insurance, you know, wealth management, whatever. Do the customer understand what the future impact will be of the decisions or purchases of these services and products they make today, right? So, you know, if I take out this big mortgage because I want a new home, what does that mean to me in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time? You know, some jurisdictions have mandatory amortization until you come down in sort of equity to debt, equity to loan value. Okay, so what if I, as a customer, am likely to reach that in 3 years' time? Then I could potentially divert some of that cash flow into an investment to support maybe my kids' school or you know, something else. To give people that kind of map into the future and be able to sort of understand, you know, what kind of impact will these things, what is the bad outcome, what is a good outcome, what is the run-of-the-mill outcome. I think that is key, really, and a lot of the customer challenges revolve around that. So I think that's where you should focus.
And so there's been a lot of discussions over the recent years about the best approach to wealth management being that hybrid approach. And will the cost of living crisis sort of increase this mentality where people can have those streamlined approaches and processes that they get from technology, but then also having the safety net of having a human that they can talk to if they get worried or if they need some support with something?
Yeah, so I think if you look back, you know, from the early days of FinTech, there was a lot of focus and a lot of belief that, you know, technology would really solve everything and take away the need for the human touch, if you will. And I think that, again, if you relate it back to the cost of living crisis and the sort of, you know, the market developments we see, whatever, if everything is a sunny day, markets rise, it's kind of easy, you know, everybody you know starts to talk about how good investments they made in this execution-only app they have and whatever. It's all a pleasure, really, right? When that kind of reverses, I think there's a lot of anxiety and worry that come in. You know, some may have taken too much risk or made bets too big for them when they have an actual problem. And some people, you know, may be affected of higher interest rates in terms of your mortgage. So you have to sort of save on other aspects of your life. Maybe you can afford to, you know, let your kids go to all these activities in the afternoons, etc., sports and whatever. So I think with that, that's also where the human relationship excels, right? So you can really constantly, as a human to human in a meeting, physical or like this on the video screen, it's kind of easy to know how the other person feels, and you can adapt your approach and the information and guidance you provide. The problem, however, is obviously that, you know, and this is a problem for all more sort of manual labor heavy type businesses. The rest of society is getting more efficient by the day, right? So I mean, cars are easier to manufacture. Everything that machines can do just gets cheaper, and you reduce the need for manual labor. And that means as productivity increases in the economy as a whole, the cost of having manual people doing stuff increases, right? Because everybody's more productive. So the challenge here is that ideally you want to, as you say, provide the best of both worlds, right? But you need to focus on cost efficiency, I think. I mean, there's no way around it. And I think financial markets, if you look back like 40, 50 years, it's been such a beneficial position that, you know, revenue and profits has been high. It's always been the possibility to just hire a few more hands to get stuff done. I think really the last, you know, 5-10 years, that competition is a lot higher. There's a lot more transparency, especially in the wealth space. You know, margins are coming down as a macro trend. So yeah, I think it's really urgent to focus on cost efficiency. And obviously, cost efficiency, unless you want to reduce the quality of your service, you need to free up time with your advisors. Each advisor can serve more people, be it hybrid, physical, or whatever, or just be, you know, on the chat with somebody in a self-service situation. So you need to free up the time and make them more efficient, and you have to use technology to do that, right? That's the obvious solution. So but I think you have to be smart about it, you know, because you don't want to take away that human aspect. It's very, and I think it's going to be a great competitive advantage as well, right? If you successfully introduce cost efficiency and you can afford to have that, that's a competitive advantage, definitely going forward.
And so do you think that, you know, during this the next few years during this cost of living crisis, do you think that customer centricity is going to be such a vital point for firms to sort of succeed during this time?
I mean, that's obviously our firm belief, right? So I think it's kind of interesting. There is still a lot of product focus and or focus on decision support on information and whatever that, you know, advisors say appreciate. But the end customer, do they really care, right? So if you look at the sort of original robo-advisors, a lot of them were much more about, you know, rather than invest in a fund or getting a model portfolio from somebody, the machine will provide you with a model portfolio, depending on your risk preferences. That's still a product-centric approach, right? It's about what product, like having the machine guiding you to choose the product, right? I think the value here going forward and where, you know, you can still make money, because products are commoditized. The first robo-advisor was a bit unique. You can just buy a robo-advice solution, right? Just have the thing deployed to your customers. The value here is to understand the type of customers you're working with. What are their main challenges, main problems? And I mean, this is a generic sales problem, right? But really go away from their problem is not anymore to choose a good, well-diversified global equity fund, right? You can get that from everywhere. Outperformance is really difficult to deterministically provide, right? So it's really not it's a product-centric argument in a sense, and it's very hard to try to sell using that aspect, right? Because it's really hard to guarantee that you actually do it. But people pay for convenience in their lives all the time. People pay to get problems solved, you know, and as soon as you can appreciate the value as a consumer, you're happy to pay, right? Because I mean, if you jump in a German car, you typically almost immediately feels it's a nice car to drive, right? And it has a higher price, of course, but it's immediately obvious to you why the higher price is higher. If you pay people to clean your home, I mean, in Europe, a lot of people do that, right? So again, it's a very clear convenience thing, right? It's, you know, it can be pretty expensive, but like frees up hours and hours of your own time. So I think that should be the focus. Identifying your customer segments' challenges, trying to help them with that, and in a way which makes it obvious intuitively to them that you provide value. And then the rest is, you know, less complex, I think, because then people will notify that value and off you go.
Thank you. And so do you think that, you know, the focus on customer centricity will help wealth managers increase their market position during time? And do you think that's going to be such a crucial part of, you know, market success?
Yeah, I mean, again, we're firmly in that camp, right? And I think even if it's, I mean, the alternative is, I guess, that if you can successfully do it, you will have a massive competitive advantage, I think. So it might not be that everybody does it or like the whole market goes there, but the firms that are able to do it, I think will win. And it kind of sort of, I mean, if you successfully can provide value in a way that the customer understands the value you're providing, that is usually a great thing, right? And then obviously you need to be able to produce it at a cost less than what you sell it for. So I think that we will also see a lot of innovation in the business model space and how you charge for things, etc. Right? Also enabled by technology that you can do stuff on a scale which weren't really possible a while back, and then this new tech can sort of also enable business model innovation to find that match between the cost of the services and the value you provide, to make it more obvious for the consumers.
And you mentioned earlier about some of the sort of the ways about customer centricity works, but you know, are there any of the sort of the best approaches to customer centricity within wealth management that you've seen? You know, what are some of the best things that firms should be looking to do when they look to implement a customer centric approach?
So again, I don't think it's super widespread, but I think a few examples. You have a few volume players, especially in the pension space, I think, also globally, which are able to have really competitive rates and prices, right? And I think if you do nothing else, being really cheap is a great thing. And you see it again and again in the retail space, right? I mean, from a UK perspective, I guess you have the Primarks, these guys, right? It's price is the #1 USP, and it kind of works, right? Because compared to a lot of other stuff in the market that's available to the buyer, this thing is just really cheap. So it's an obvious advantage. So I think those ones, you know, have been able actually to provide also, say, occupational pension services, right, with really competitive fees, thanks to the volume advantage. If you look at the, say, more, you know, you can compare it to the luxury segments, and I guess sort of the German car analogy kind of works there as well, right? If you're more of a private banking offering or a wealth manager that targets wealthier people, it becomes a bit different, right? Because cheap doesn't really work in those contexts, right? That's not what you want to sell on. You want to provide value and want to be able to charge for the value. So there, I think it's trickier, and I think it's also kind of hard unless you actually are a customer of many of these firms. It's very hard to have a broad and also deep view on, you know, who is doing a great job. So I don't really have any clear examples there, but I think as a general observation, I think as long as you're focusing on a very specific customer challenge and you're able to solve that in a way which is, you know, very affordable and yet profitable for yourself, I think that's the target to aim for. And I'm sure there are examples of firms doing it, right, already. Although I don't think it's very common yet, right? I think that we're in the start of a trend here in the development in the wealth management and private banking sector.
Perfect, thank you. And moving over to Kidbrooke itself, how is Kidbrooke helping firms to implement these digital channels?
So we have decided to have a very narrow focus, and that is on the simulation-based analytics you need to automate a lot of the relevant decision support. So we have this solution or offering, which is called OutRank. And you can think of it as a personal ALM engine, and that might be a bit of a technical term, but it's, think about it as a Google Maps for navigating your personal finances, right? So you're able to forecast and see, the expected effect of your decisions. So if you're on Google Maps, it's different routes, right? If I take this route, given the traffic situation, it'll probably take me 15 minutes to get to where I go. And this other route is available, it takes me 25, okay. That's a clear case of using forecast of some sort, right, to make a decision. And for us, it's really similar. We're able to simulate your current situation, full balance sheet or single portfolio or whatever really the institution is working with, and what kind of questions you're trying to help your end customers with, and have that ability to forecast and see good outcomes, bad outcomes. What if I do this? What if I make this investment? What if I employ this rebalancing strategy? What if I have these financial goals in the future? What could happen? So it's all about illustrating that. And then our customers themselves choose, obviously, what is the question we want to answer? How do we want to visualize it? Make it simple enough to consume for the person on the receiving end. It's API only, which I think is a bit unique in our market. It's very high performance. So you can build really interactive experiences, be it self-service or with the advisor in the meeting. And as we've been a bit of a theme on this discussion here, we're really trying to take this end customer first approach really when we design our solution.
Perfect, thank you. And why do you think the Kidbrooke solution differs from others in the market?
So we've been able to, I think again, coming back to the value, the institution want to deliver, you have to be detailed. You have to be realistic in terms of the assumptions you use. And then it's all about hiding that complexity and packaging it in a way that your customer segment or your advisors or whoever is going to look at it understands, right? But many of these things say they don't consider fees, they don't consider tax, etc. And then the value of the number, even if it's a single number in terms of an expected outcome, is less than if you had actually taken care to deal with all those nitty-gritty difficult details. So I think having that package, both on the sort of market risk, financial time series modeling side and the cash flow modeling side, combine that with the raw speed. So you can build truly interactive services. I mean, we have customer meetings when they will interrupt us after 5 minutes and say, oh, okay, but this is like a simulation Monte Carlo based solution. And we go, yes. And they go, yeah, we looked at that last year, but it's too slow for us because we have very many customers. So we, whatever. And then when we show them the demos of what we can do, it's kind of a big surprise that you can be that sort of detailed and realistic in your assumptions and yet have a full speed. And then I think being API only also is, for bigger institutions, it's kind of nice because it's not yet another full stack application they need to fit into their complex systems landscape. They can easily integrate wherever they want it, self-service channels, advisor tools, CRM systems, portfolio management systems. And for our second way of going to market, which is through partners who sell to typically smaller firms, right? You buy a wealth management platform, and we will plug our API into that to provide them a superior financial planning experience. For those partners, it's kind of really nice that we are API only, because if we had our own front end in that kind of partner discussion, should this be done in this front end or in our front end, and there's a conflict there. Plus, the advisor experience is typically worse because you may have to rekey stuff across UIs. I think those two things are fair to say, I think, which are our own unique selling points.
Perfect. And probably the biggest question is why should a firm work with Kidbrooke?
So I think having a top best in class or best of breed solution tech wise is there, right? And that's kind of a hygiene factor in a sense. And then I think it's for our experience in building these type of solutions together with our customers. We have typically a very close partnership relationship with our customers as well. Really working with them, helping them designing all the way to sitting in with focus groups for end customers. So I think we have a fairly unique understanding also about the end customer situation and that customer centricity and what value it can bring. So I think, yeah, that will be something.
Perfect, thank you. And that's everything I've got. I was going to ask, is there anything you'd like to just add at the end about Kidbrooke or about digital channels?
No, I think, we've been through a lot, I think, so far. So yeah, very happy on my end. Hopefully it sort of adds some value to people listening in the end.
Yeah, well, perfect. And yeah, thank you for taking some time to listen to me. And yeah, speaking to me.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
You too. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.